In the heart of Cyprus, on an island bathed in sunlight and kissed by the azure waves of the Mediterranean, there lived a sculptor named Pygmalion. Known across his city for his extraordinary skill, he had hands that could transform cold, lifeless marble into forms that seemed to breathe. Villagers often spoke of his talent with awe, but there was a quiet sorrow in Pygmalion's eyes, one that no one understood. Despite the praise and admiration he received, his heart remained untouched by the love of others. Pygmalion had grown weary of the world around him. He had observed many marriages and courtships, but he was disillusioned. The women he met seemed shallow, more concerned with appearances and wealth than with the purity of heart or the beauty of the soul. The thought of love, once warm and promising, had become bitter to him. In his solitude, he turned to his art, letting his longing and loneliness pour into his work. Marble became his confidant, the studio his sanctuary. One day, Pygmalion stood before a slab of ivory-white marble, feeling the weight of his desire to create something perfect. For years, he had sculpted countless figures, but now he sought to craft a woman unlike any other, a woman of flawless beauty, grace, and kindness. He wanted a companion not of flesh and blood, but of marble, untouched by the faults of humanity. His hands moved deftly, chiseling the stone with patience and care, every stroke fueled by a yearning he could barely name. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the sculpture took shape. Pygmalion poured into her every dream, every ideal he had ever held of love and companionship. She stood tall, her posture noble yet gentle, her features soft yet striking. Her eyes, though unblinking, seemed to hold a depth of emotion that astonished him. Pygmalion worked tirelessly, neglecting his meals and sleep, for the thought of her completed form consumed him. Finally, he stepped back to behold his creation. The figure was perfect. Galatea, as he named her, seemed almost alive. Her hair cascaded like a river of gold over her shoulders, her lips curved in a subtle, knowing smile, and her eyes glimmered with a serenity that Pygmalion had never seen in the world around him. For the first time in years, he felt a stirring in his heart, a warmth that had long been absent. He no longer felt alone. He felt connected to something beyond the ordinary, to something divine. But with this joy came a strange sorrow. Pygmalion knew that Galatea, for all her beauty and perfection, was still cold marble. She could not speak, move, or return the feelings that had blossomed in his own heart. Yet every day he would sit beside her, sharing stories of his life, his hopes, and his quiet observations of the world outside. He would brush a strand of imagined hair from her face, smile at her delicate hands, and whisper to her as if she could hear. Word of Pygmalion's obsession began to spread throughout the town. Neighbors whispered of the sculptor who loved his own creation, some calling him mad, others feeling pity for the lonely man. But Pygmalion paid them no mind. To him, Galatea was more real than the shallow conversations and fleeting attractions of ordinary life. She represented a purity and truth that he could not find elsewhere, and in her presence he felt a peace he had never known. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of rose and amber, Pygmalion found himself kneeling before the statue. He held her cold hands in his own, wishing with every fiber of his being that she could feel the warmth of life. "If only you were real," he whispered, his voice trembling. "If only you could walk with me, speak with me, and share this world, I would never let you go." Little did Pygmalion know, the gods had been watching him. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, had taken notice of his devotion not to a woman of flesh and blood, but to the ideal of love itself. She saw in his longing a reflection of her own desire to inspire love in the hearts of mortals. The purity of his feelings, the depth of his yearning, moved her. And so the goddess began to weave her magic. considering a blessing for the sculptor who loved so wholly and so sincerely. That night, as Pygmalion slept in his studio beside his beloved statue, a soft breeze filled the room. The flickering candlelight cast dancing shadows across the marble, and Pygmalion dreamed of a life in which Galatea walked beside him, smiled at him, and spoke with a voice that resonated in his soul. Though he could not know it yet, his longing had not been unnoticed. A moment of wonder, a miracle of love, was quietly stirring, waiting for the day when stone would give way to life and dreams would become reality. The days passed slowly in Pygmalion's quiet studio, yet in each moment, the sculptor found a sense of purpose he had never known before. Though Galatea remained cold and still, her presence filled the room with a warmth that no human companion had ever brought him. Pygmalion spoke to her for hours, sharing stories of the world beyond the island, of bustling markets, fragrant gardens, and the laughter of children. He told her about the ocean, how the waves kissed the shore with tireless devotion, and about the skies, which shifted endlessly in colors that no artist could capture. Pygmalion's friends and neighbors began to grow concerned for him. They whispered that he had become a prisoner of his own imagination, a man who loved a statue more than life itself. Some even tried to persuade him to abandon his obsession, urging him to seek companionship with real women, to marry and live among people. But Pygmalion's heart was closed to such advice. He had searched for perfection in the world and found only imperfection. In Galatea, he saw not just beauty, but a soul as pure as the marble from which she was carved. One night, under a sky filled with stars, Pygmalion knelt before the statue as he often did. He traced the delicate curve of her cheek and whispered, "How I wish you could know this world. How I wish you could know me." His words were sincere, his longing so profound that the air itself seemed to hold its breath. It was then that something extraordinary began to stir. Unseen by Pygmalion, a gentle warmth touched Galatea's marble form, softening the cold stone like the first rays of dawn melting frost. Aphrodite, moved by Pygmalion's devotion, had chosen that moment to bless the sculptor's love. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the lines of Galatea's face softened. The warmth spread through her body, awakening the hidden spark of life. Pygmalion, unaware of the divine intervention, continued to speak to her as if nothing had changed. Yet when he reached to lift her hand, he felt a faint pulse, a subtle vibration, almost like the heartbeat of the earth itself. He froze, eyes wide, unsure whether it was his imagination or something miraculous. "Galatea?" he whispered, a mixture of awe and fear in his voice. And then, impossibly, her eyes opened. They were wide and bright, reflecting the candlelight with a depth and warmth that took Pygmalion's breath away. She blinked, as if seeing the world for the first time, and slowly raised her hand to touch his. You are real," Pygmalion murmured, his voice trembling. He could hardly believe what he saw. The marble had transformed into living flesh, smooth and warm under his touch. Galatea's lips curved into a gentle smile, and she spoke for the first time, her voice soft, melodic, and filled with wonder. I can see," she said, her eyes drinking in the studio, the soft flicker of the firelight, and finally resting on Pygmalion himself. "And I can feel." For a moment, neither of them spoke.
Pygmalion was overwhelmed by a surge of joy, awe, and relief. The woman he had loved in silence, in longing, and in solitude was no longer a dream. She was real, breathing beside him. Tears of happiness welled in his eyes, and he held her close, careful not to crush her in his disbelief. Galatea, too, felt a rush of emotions she could hardly name. The world was strange and new, and yet she felt a connection to Pygmalion that was as natural as the air she now breathed. She had been shaped by his hands, molded by his care and imagination, and now she was alive because of the purity of his love. Every touch, every word, every moment of devotion had brought her into being. In the following days, Pygmalion and Galatea explored the island together. She marveled at the flowers, the trees, and the gentle lap of waves on the shore. He taught her about the stars and the stories behind each constellation, about the winds and the songs of birds and the laughter of children playing in the streets. Each day deepened their bond, transforming what had been longing and imagination into shared experience and understanding. Yet, even in the joy of this miraculous love, challenges arose. Galatea had been born of stone and divine magic. She was new to human emotion and sensation. She sometimes struggled to understand feelings like fear, sadness, and sorrow, concepts Pygmalion had known too well in his lonely years. Pygmalion, patient and tender, guided her through these lessons of the heart. He told her about love, not just the magic that had given her life, but the quiet, steady devotion that binds two people together in trust and care. Despite the novelty of her existence, Galatea quickly became not just a companion, but a reflection of Pygmalion's own heart. She shared his curiosity, his delight in small joys, and his appreciation for beauty in the simplest of things. Their laughter echoed through the studio, their hands clasped as they walked by the shore, their hearts beating in harmony. As the sun set one evening, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Pygmalion looked at Galatea and whispered, "I created you from my longing, but you have given me something more. You have given me love, truly and wholly, in a way I never imagined possible." She smiled, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and affection. "And you gave me life, not just in body, but in heart. You taught me to feel, and in doing so, you taught me to love." And in that moment, beneath the vast, endless sky of Cyprus, two souls, once separated by the boundary between dream and reality, found themselves united. What had begun as longing, isolation, and devotion had blossomed into living, breathing love. A love that no longer belonged to imagination or marble, but to the world itself.
The days following Galatea's miraculous awakening were filled with wonder, laughter, and the tender discoveries of two hearts learning to live together. Pygmalion felt as though he had stepped into a dream, one that had begun in marble and now existed in sunlight and soft breezes, and the warmth of Galatea's hand in his own. Yet even the most perfect love must face trials, and the path ahead was not without shadows. Though Galatea had been granted life, she was still new to the human world. Every sensation was overwhelming, from the softness of grass beneath her feet to the bitter tang of salt from the sea. She would sometimes recoil from sudden sounds or stumble as she navigated streets and stairs. Pygmalion, ever patient, held her close and guided her with a gentle hand, never allowing frustration to touch his voice. Yet he began to notice small moments of unease in her expression, moments he could not explain, nor could he smooth away entirely. One afternoon, as they walked along the sunlit cliffs overlooking the sea, Galatea paused and gazed at the horizon with a distant expression. "Pygmalion, do all people struggle as I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Do they not know who they are or how to feel?" Pygmalion pondered her question carefully. "People are complicated, my love. We are born with hearts that can ache and rejoice in the same moment. Life is not always kind, but it is in the struggle that we grow. You are learning, as we all do, how to understand the world and your own heart." Galatea listened intently, yet a shadow of doubt lingered in her eyes. She had been born from perfection, molded to embody beauty and grace, and yet she felt the sting of imperfection within herself, a trembling, fragile emotion she could neither name nor control. Pygmalion recognized that this new awareness, this understanding of human vulnerability, would be one of the greatest challenges for her. And though he loved her dearly, he knew that guiding her through it would require patience beyond measure. As the weeks passed, whispers of their unusual love began to reach the ears of others. Some villagers viewed their union with awe, while others with suspicion and envy. Rumors swirled about the sculptor who had fallen in love with a woman who had once been a statue. Some claimed it was witchcraft, others called it madness. Pygmalion, who once cared little for the opinions of others, now felt a pang of concern for Galatea. He feared that the world might reject her as easily as they had once rejected him. One evening, a group of merchants and townsfolk arrived at his studio, curious to see the living statue they had heard about. Galatea greeted them politely, her movements graceful, yet her heart raced with anxiety. She was alive, yes, but this world was still unfamiliar, filled with eyes that judged and whispered. The villagers, though mostly polite, could not hide their astonishment, their fascination tinged with unease. "Pygmalion," Galatea whispered later, her voice soft, do they see me as I am, or as a miracle to be gawked at?" He took her hands in his, pressing them to his chest. "They may see wonder, or curiosity, or even fear, but I see you, Galatea. I see your heart, your courage, and your spirit. You are not a statue. You are my companion, my equal, my love." Despite Pygmalion's words, a subtle tension grew between them. Galatea, though eager to embrace life fully, sometimes retreated into herself, overwhelmed by new emotions she barely could comprehend. Pygmalion, in turn, feared for her well-being, torn between protecting her and allowing her the freedom to explore the world on her own terms. They loved each other deeply, yet the intricacies of human experience, jealousy, insecurity, doubt, were beginning to test the foundation of their bond. One night, as they walked along the shore under a sky ablaze with stars, Galatea stopped and stared at the reflection of the moon in the water. "Pygmalion, I feel something strange," she confessed, her voice trembling. "A sadness I cannot explain, a fear that I will disappoint you or that I am not enough for you." He pulled her close, cradling her face in his hands. "Galatea, listen to me. You are more than enough. You are my heart, my life. The imperfections you fear are what make you real. They're what make us human. Love is not about perfection. It is about acceptance, patience, and trust." Her tears glistened in the moonlight as she rested her head against his chest. "I want to trust, Pygmalion, but the world feels so strange and I am still learning who I am." He stroked her hair, whispering reassurances, and I will walk with you through it all. Every step, every fear, every joy. I will be there. You are never alone, Pygmalion. Never. In the weeks that followed, they faced many small trials together. Galatea learned the complexities of conversation, the nuances of laughter, and the bittersweet nature of grief and disappointment. Pygmalion, in turn, discovered that love is not merely the fulfillment of longing, but the enduring flame that continues to burn, even in the shadows of fear and uncertainty. Their love, tested by the weight of reality, grew stronger. Galatea began to understand that being alive meant embracing both joy and sorrow, both certainty and doubt. And Pygmalion, once a solitary dreamer, realized that love is not merely the fulfillment of longing, it is the courage to face the unknown together, hand in hand. By the end of that season, the sculptor and his beloved had weathered their first storm. Their bond, though tested, was no longer fragile. It was resilient, forged in patience, understanding, and unwavering devotion. Together, they learned that the true miracle of love is not merely the spark of desire, but the enduring flame that continues to burn even in the shadows of fear and uncertainty.
Spring arrived on Cyprus like a gentle promise, painting the island in vibrant greens and blossoms of every color. For Pygmalion and Galatea, life had grown rich with both wonder and understanding. They walked the beaches at dawn, collected shells along the shore, and shared laughter in the fields where the wildflowers swayed. Galatea's eyes, once wide with awe and uncertainty, now shone with confidence and curiosity. She had learned the rhythm of life, the subtle currents of human emotion, and the quiet strength that comes from loving and being loved in return. Yet, even in this season of beauty, both Pygmalion and Galatea understood that their love, miraculous as it was, had been hard-won. They had faced fear, doubt, and the judgments of others, but through every trial, their devotion had deepened. They realized that love is not only the joy of togetherness, but the steadfast support through life's inevitable challenges. Pygmalion often marveled at how far they had come, from a lonely sculptor speaking to a lifeless statue to two beings walking hand in hand, heart to heart, sharing every experience. One evening, under a sky streaked with gold and rose, Galatea turned to Pygmalion with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "what would have happened if the gods had not noticed your love?" He took her hands in his fingers warm against her skin, and looked deeply into her eyes. "I have thought about it," he admitted, "and I know that life would have been lonely, filled with longing and dreams that could never be fulfilled. But now we have each other, and that is more than a dream. It is real." Galatea smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "You gave me life, Pygmalion, and in doing so, you gave me the chance to love. I never imagined a world could be so full of wonder, and yet you taught me to see it, to feel it, and to embrace it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the couple walked along the shore in silence, listening to the whisper of the waves. It was a silence not of emptiness, but of contentment. Two hearts fully present in the moment, trusting in the life they had built together. They no longer feared the judgments of others, nor the uncertainties of existence. They had faced doubt and emerged stronger, their love resilient and unwavering. Time, as it always does, passed. The seasons shifted, and the island witnessed the growth of their love in subtle ways. The way Galatea laughed more freely, how Pygmalion's hands no longer trembled with the solitude of longing, the shared understanding in a simple touch or a glance. Neighbors, once curious and skeptical, began to admire the quiet devotion they saw between the couple, and slowly, whispers of wonder replaced whispers of suspicion. Pygmalion and Galatea became a living testament to the power of love, perseverance, and faith in one another. One morning, as Pygmalion prepared to sculpt a new figure, Galatea approached him with a serene smile. "Do you remember," she asked, "the first day you held my hand and wished I could feel?" He chuckled softly, the memory vivid in his mind. "I do. I never imagined that a wish could change everything." "But it did," she said, her eyes glimmering with affection. "And in that change, we found each other." Pygmalion set down his chisel and embraced her, holding her as if he would never let go. "Yes, my love, we found each other, and I will never stop cherishing you." As they stood there, the sun rising behind them, it was as if the island itself celebrated their union. The waves sparkled in the morning light, the birds sang with joyful abandon, and the soft breeze carried a whisper of blessing. Their love, born from longing, perfected by devotion, and blessed by the gods, had become eternal, not only in the physical sense, but in the depth of connection between two souls. In the years that followed, Pygmalion and Galatea continued to live simply yet fully. They explored the world together, learned from one another, and cherished each day as a gift. Their bond, tested by time and trial, remained unbroken. Galatea, once a creation of marble, had discovered the joys, sorrows, and endless beauty of life. Pygmalion, once lonely and disillusioned, had discovered the miracle of love made real. Though the story of Pygmalion and Galatea is one that has traveled through the ages, its essence lies not only in the miraculous awakening of a statue, but in the truth that love itself is transformative. It teaches patience, fosters growth, and reveals the beauty within the human heart. And perhaps most importantly, it shows that when love is pure, devoted, and unwavering, even the impossible can become reality. As the sun set over Cyprus, painting the horizon in shades of amber and violet, Pygmalion and Galatea sat hand in hand on the cliffs overlooking the sea. They were two hearts, two souls, intertwined forever, proof that love, in its truest form, can transcend loneliness, imperfection, and even the boundary between dream and life. And in the quiet of that golden evening, they knew, without question, that they had found something eternal, each other.